I'm here with ThrashTrumbo, who is a Bible instructor, spiritual life coach, evangelist in the Georgia Cumberland Conference, working there with her pastor husband. And I have heard that you've been doing some evangelistic webinars using online technologies. What have you been doing and how's it been going?
Thanks, Larry, for including me in the conversation here. It's an interesting journey and quite a learning curve. We are still learning how to use the web for evangelism effectively, but we have done a number of webinars. We've done several Jesus-based prophecy webinars, I should say. We've done a webinar on ghosts and spirits. We did that around Halloween time, a time when people are thinking about those things. And we also did a webinar on rest and the Sabbath. The prophecy seminar was about 8 to 10 sessions, but the other were shorter, about 3 or 4 sessions each.
So in your experience, what are some of the differences in terms of the actual evangelistic presentations? What are some things that you need to do differently online from what you would do in an in-person public presentation?
That's a good question. I think that one of the first things we need to do is address our expectations. What are we expecting out of the webinar? Because a webinar is not the same thing as an online evangelistic series. It's not the same thing as what John Bradshaw is doing with Hope Awakens. It's not an online sermon. It's not like what you do on Sabbath morning at church. And it's not the same thing as an online Bible study where you sit down with somebody and you're just going through the Bible together, conversing, going back and forth. It's not any of those things. It is a unique experience and needs to be addressed that way. This is also not fast evangelism. You're not going to get done with 28 nights and baptize 20 people at the end of it. That's just not that's not been our experience with web evangelism. It's part of a process of evangelism that is part of your overall strategy that you're doing in your church or in your personal ministry. We don't just do a webinar and expect that to be enough. We've created different series and then we repeat them from time to time. We feel as though if we can do 2 or 3 webinars throughout the year, that's more effective than just doing one standalone webinar. From that, of course, we hope to be able to connect with the people who come to our webinar by getting their web address, their email address, connecting with them, starting to build a relationship with them online first, and then moving to voice through phone, and then maybe a meetup somewhere to meet together at Panera for a little Bible study, or just to get just a face-to-face meetup. This takes time. It may be a year, maybe a year and a half from the time you do your webinar to the time that interested person has gone through a process of relationship with you and may wind up visiting your church. So I think that's important to adjust one's expectations to say this is part of a long-term evangelistic strategy.
So this is really a tool that allows you to extend the evangelistic funnel beyond what you could if you're just dealing with in-person interactions.
Exactly so. We have been going through the last 25 years the biggest change in the way that communication is done that's happened in 500 years. We've never had this kind of access into people's homes and minds. This is a new day and a new opportunity for us. There are far more people online than there are at the mall, and certainly more people online than there are at church. So it's definitely to our advantage to explore how we can utilize this modality for the gospel.
I just saw an article in the Wall Street Journal talking about musicians with the concerts right now, talking about popular secular musicians, concerts being shut down right now, and particularly smaller regional bands there was a band that was scheduled to do like a series of 6 concerts around St. Patrick's Day, and the event was shut down. So they decided to actually do an online concert, and they had expected to be able to reach about 10,000 fans through these live concerts in the Boston area. They did it online. They had 10 million participants.
Wow. Why am I not surprised?
going from a local in-person thing to the online experience opens up the window. And, right now we're living in an era of stay-at-home orders, where I'm in week 6 of working from home because of COVID-19. And this is the only way that we can actually propel evangelism forward right now. But
That's
you've
right.
been doing this for 3 years, even longer than that.
Right.
So in your experience, tell me the actual presentations themselves. What are some things that you need to do differently?
Well, the first thing that I think you have to keep in mind is that the person you're speaking to is on their computer. That means that they have the web open in front of them. So you need to work to keep their attention on you. If not, they're going to be surfing, cruising other websites, doing things like that while you're just kind of droning on in the background, or they'll just turn you off and go somewhere else. So it's important to keep it very interesting. I've realized that I have to use a lot more stories. I use graphics a lot in my presentations because I want to keep the attention on me. I do some limited switching back and forth from screen share graphics to me. You can't do too much of that back and forth or else people get a little bit dizzy. But a lot of graphics, a lot of stories, and keep it short. What might be if I were presenting in a public setting, what might be an hour-long evangelistic presentation, I scale back to a 20 to 30 minute webinar presentation filled with graphics. If I use Bible verses, I put those on the screen. I don't expect that somebody is going to pull out a Bible and look it up. A lot of people don't even have Bibles. They use Bibles on their phone or they use Bibles on computer. So that's something that I think is important, especially after you've kind of gotten a little bit of an audience and people are giving you feedback on if they are enjoying the presentations. Your last presentation or 2 may be a little bit longer, but especially at the beginning, short, punchy, very interesting presentations, I think are crucial to keeping the attention of the people on you.
Let's talk briefly about technology. So SermonView has been working with doing some integrations between our marketing, evangelism marketing, and Zoom. We also use Facebook quite a bit in our marketing methodologies. What have you found to be the most effective for reaching people?
Well, we like Zoom because it gives you an editable recording at the end of your webinar. So you can take that presentation and use it again and again. Zoom also has the ability to broadcast live on Facebook at the same time that you're recording on Zoom. And Facebook is where we've gotten the most viewers. They're just there. And Facebook, of course, prioritizes live events. So if you show up live on Facebook, it's going to appear in all your followers' news feeds that you're there live. They may get, if they get notifications, they may get a notification on their phone that you are live on Facebook. So while we like to use Zoom for its capabilities, we really love Facebook for its reach. It's just a lot of people are on Facebook. And I know they say that it's the platform for the older people. I'm sorry, there are lots of kids on there too. There are people of all ages. It still has the highest number of participants of all ages of any of the social media platforms, major platforms.
Now with Zoom, obviously you can, because you have to have an invitation or you have to have the link. And when you come in, you have to put your name in. So you're able to see who's there. How do you pay attention to attendance? How do you track attendance or see who's participating when you're doing it through Facebook?
Facebook is a little bit more complicated unless they like your presentation, or unless, and even then you may not know who they are. If they comment on your presentation, then you know who they are. I always ask a couple of 2 or 3 times throughout the presentation. I encourage people to make a comment, to leave a prayer request, to ask a question, to make it something that will cause them to want to make a comment. I'm not above telling them, this is how I know you're there. I don't know who you are unless you leave a comment. I'd love to know you're here. I want you to know I go through every night and pray for every single person who makes a comment on Facebook. So love to have you leave a comment. That's what I do. I also give them an email address that they can write to me. Sometimes the person has prayer requests that they don't want to put on a public Facebook comment. So I give them an email address that they can write to me with their prayer requests or questions. So I try to give them several different ways they can connect with me, but I like it when they leave me a comment. Participate in chat on the chat feature on Zoom. That's good too. That I can actually watch while I'm presenting. And sometimes I'll stop my presentation or pause to answer a question that someone puts up in the chat. But usually I'll save questions till the next night. And I tell people that. I say, you leave me a question, I'll address it tomorrow night. And that also helps to draw them back in for the next presentation.
Right. Now, online evangelistic presentations, these are not reaping series. It's really hard to ask for decision. And there's something about an online situation that is, you're not able to build the same kind of heart connection that you can in person. So talk to me, how do you make the transition then from an online relationship to an in-person relationship?
And again, this is part of what takes time in your web evangelism. This is much more on the time frame of giving Bible studies than the time frame of doing evangelistic meetings. Evangelistic meetings gives you a much more truncated time frame where you really can help people make decisions in a relatively short period of time, maybe over the course of a month. They may be deciding to keep the Sabbath, to change their views on what happens when you die, and even to join the church. With web evangelism, the time frame is broadened out. I don't think that's a bad thing, though, because I think that it does give us more opportunity for relationship building. But you need a way to connect with people. Now, if you're using Facebook, that's easy, because if they leave you a comment, you know where they are on Facebook. You can send them a personal message and start to build a relationship with them that way. If they're on Zoom, you've got an email address or a phone number. And so, of course, Zoom is invitation. So you're going to know the people who come on Zoom. With Facebook, you'll know them if they leave a comment. There may be a lot of people who watch your presentations on Facebook who never leave a comment, and that's okay too. God is still working. The Word of God is like seed, and so something's going to happen when you throw seed out into a field. So at some point, you may never know what it is, but at some point that seed is going to do something. But I think that if you are vigilant to look at your Facebook or to work the people that you've invited to your Zoom presentation, reach out to them. And this is, as a Bible instructor, this is what I do all the time. Just reach out, make those personal contacts. But that's what really has to be done on this. So it's sort of an opportunity to get that name, that information on how to contact somebody, so that you can start to build a personal relationship with them. And this does take time. We have usually figured that it's going to take a year or two. It may go faster, but that's just what our expectation is. It's not going to be real fast, but that it will take time, but that we can build a strong relationship during that time. So that's not a bad thing.
Tell me some stories of people that have participated in some sort of evangelistic webinar with you, and what became
and
of
what's
it.
happened. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we have a lot of people that we're still working with, people to whom we're still just reaching out. They'll send us private messages on Facebook or email, and we just are contacting them on a somewhat regular basis. Some are open to more regular contact than others. It's also been a wonderful opportunity to encourage people who maybe aren't attending church, aren't in regular Bible studies with us, but have some kind of connection or relationship with us. It's a wonderful place for them to go because it's not threatening. They don't have to go to our church, or they're not having me to their house. It's very non-threatening. So they can, if they're just a little iffy about church attendance or starting Bible studies, in fact, we have found that they often are very willing to attend a web-based webinar. And then that gives us more opportunity for conversation with them. One woman who attended our webinar 2 years ago, she had come to one of our public meetings a couple of nights. She hadn't come regularly, but she'd come a little bit. And so we had her name and her phone number and her email, and we invited her to the Zoom-based webinar. It was our Jesus-based Bible prophecy webinar. She came. She attended every single night. She wanted the material that we offered by email. So we sent her material, and now she is attending church regularly. She's attending our small group meetings. Now that we're doing our small groups online, she's attending those. She is much more involved and engaged with us now. And I really do believe that the webinar was that first step for her in becoming more engaged, where she started to feel comfortable with what we're saying. So that's been a good opportunity for us too, to take some of those people who are maybe a little iffy with their interest, but they are more interested once they can go to the webinar.
So in the overall context of the evangelism cycle, talk to me at your church. Tell us, what are the various things that you do? Dr. Roger Walter talks about the evangelism pyramid and friendship and kindness, compassion ministries, and all the things that lead up to reaping seed. Talk to me about some of the things that you do and how evangelistic webinars fit into that.
Well, we have a very interesting number of visitors that walk through our doors, people who live in our area who could become regular attendees, but who aren't Adventist or are lapsed Adventist. We try to be very assiduous about following up with every single one of those people. We try to get names, contact information. I try to make some kind of offer to them every opportunity that I have. When I see them at church, I'll offer them a personal Bible study or a web presentation. That is something that often people will participate in because it's just not scary like a face-to-face kind of meeting is. So they're happy often to learn that we have a web-based presentation coming up. Yes, they would very much like to have information about that. And that gives me permission to contact them, to reach out to them, both with friendship and also with information about the webinar. When we get interest cards from the various media ministries such as It Is Written, Voice of Prophecy, we offer them also our web-based webinars as well as personal Bible studies. We give them an option. We find that if that's on the menu, that it often gives people a sense of something that they can participate in without the threat of the commitment that they feel if they have to meet with us face to face. It's a lower, it feels like lower commitment to them, and yet they are still getting what we want to give them.
Awesome. Ann, thank you so much for your time, for your wisdom, for your experience. Thanks for taking the time to just share this with us.
Just let me say thank you to you too, because SermonView has really played a big role in helping us to promote our webinars, and we really appreciate that. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Ann. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Larry.